All right, welcome. Let's jump right in. Today, we're going to talk about something fascinating. You know, all those unseen, informal ways a company gets things done, turns out that can be its greatest strength or its biggest weakness. So, we're going to explore how to make those invisible assets visible and turn them into a real strategic advantage. And you know, the author of the piece we're looking at, Maurizio Rizzeri, he just nails it with this quote. This really sets the stage. Because we're not talking about small stuff here, like minor inefficiencies. No. What's unseen can literally be the one thing that separates a perfect operation from a complete disaster. The stakes, they are incredibly high. So, okay, what is this unseen asset we're talking about? Well, the author, who spent 2 decades working in shipyards, gives it a really cool name. He calls it operational memory. And here's what that actually means. Operational memory is all that knowledge floating around in people's heads. You know, the tricks, the shortcuts, all those unwritten rules about how we do things here. It's the secret sauce, really. It's what makes a company unique. It's a huge asset. But, and this is a big but, there's a catch. And this slide right here shows you the core problem perfectly. On one side, you've got what the author calls shipyard memory. This is knowledge that just lives in people's heads. It's passed around by word of mouth, which means it's super, super fragile. I mean, what happens if that one key person leaves? Poof, the knowledge is gone. But on the other side, that's the goal, corporate coherence. This is where that same knowledge is formalized, so it's solid, it's repeatable, and you can actually scale it. Okay, so the big question is, how do you get from that fragile shipyard memory to real coherence? Well, the first tool is something you've probably heard of and maybe even rolled your eyes at, thinking it's just boring bureaucracy. We're talking about standard operating procedures, or SOPs. And this really gets to the heart of it for any serious company, right? How do you make sure your best work is repeatable? How do you guarantee that the next project is just as good, or hey, even better than your last big win? It's like, how do you capture lightning in a bottle and then do it again and again on command? The answer, believe it or not, lies in those SOPs. But listen, we're not talking about some dusty binder sitting on a shelf. You have to think of them as a living, breathing system for turning what one person knows into something the whole team knows. It's what moves you from constantly putting out fires to actually preventing them from ever starting. And that last point is so crucial. You just can't improve what you've never taken the time to define. All right, now let's talk about the second piece of this puzzle. And this is where things get really interesting, because the author takes a common business headache, I'm talking about regulations, and completely reframes it. I mean, let's be real. This is how most of us think about regulations, isn't it? They're just walls. They're burdens. Obstacles that slow everything down and just get in the way of doing the actual work. But here's the big mindset shift. The author argues that regulations aren't walls at all. Instead, think of them as defining your possibility space. They're like the lines on a playing field. They tell you where you can operate safely, with confidence, and with credibility. They actually map out the safe space for you to innovate and grow. And here's a fantastic way to think about it from the source material. Ignoring regulations isn't you being lean or agile. It's like trying to navigate the ocean with a map of the desert. I mean, sooner or later, you're going to hit a reef. It's just a massive strategic mistake. Okay, so let's pull this together. We've got our internal know-how captured in SOPs, and we've got these external rules, the regulations. The real magic, the big goal here, is to merge them into something the author calls normalized compliance. And the way to get there is actually a really clear 4-step path. You start by documenting your internal knowledge in those SOPs. Then you figure out all your external regulations. Step 3 is the key. You redesign your SOPs so that they automatically include all that compliance stuff. And finally, step 4, compliance just becomes the normal, everyday way you do business. It's not a special event, not a last-minute panic before an audit. It's just normal. So what happens if you don't do this? What's the cost? Well, the author has a term for it, entropic debt. Just think of it like a tax you pay for chaos. It's all that wasted energy, all the time your team spends on fixing mistakes, on rework, on arguments that only happen because the right way to do things wasn't clear and built in from the start. But when you pay down that debt, when you get rid of that chaos, this is what happens. Suddenly, compliance isn't a cost center you're trying to shrink. It becomes a genuine strategic advantage. It makes your whole operation smoother, more reliable, and ultimately more profitable. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually do it? How do you put it into practice? Well, this last part is all about building excellence by design, not just hoping it happens by accident. And to show this isn't just theory, the author actually developed a system based on this whole philosophy. It's called SYRAGM. It's basically a real-world tool that does exactly what we've been talking about. It formalizes that know-how, it maps the rules directly to your procedures, and it bakes compliance right into the daily workflow. It's the practical application of all these ideas. And this final quote just brings everything together so well. Excellence, it's not about doing something amazing just once. It's not about heroic efforts. It's about building a system, a kind of machine for success that makes sure you're doing the right things the right way every single time. So that leaves us with one final question, and this one's for you. Think about your own company, your own team. What's your operational memory? What are those invisible processes, those unwritten rules that make you great? And maybe more importantly, what are you doing to protect them? How are you making them visible and turning them into a real, lasting strategic advantage?